Hey everybody, well, let me refresh this real quick. Got to fix the camera. There we go. Hey everybody, First Warn Storm Team, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich. Thanks for tuning in tonight. We're going to get right to the latest on Dorian. I know we've got people all over the country and the Southeast watching our live stream. We're on YouTube, Periscope, Facebook, multiple pages. We're on our app right now. As I see the push notification go out to our Charlotte app. Let me pull up real quickly. I've got the 8 p.m. advisory that just came in. So I'll pull that up here. And you can see at the top of your screen here, I'm actually kind of circle a couple things. Winds, 140 miles per hour. In fact, I want to make my head a lot bigger. I don't need to be that big. There we go. We'll shrink myself down there. So stationary, this has been crazy. This storm is sitting over Grand Bahama Island. It's been there for, gosh, 12 hours now. I keep looking, not only the movement, but how far away it is from from Freeport, which is in the Grand Bahama Island. Yeah, that's crazy to see that amount of stationary movement. It's almost unheard of to see that thing just sitting there for such a long period of time. So kind of crazy to see that. Also, the 25 miles northeast of Freeport is essentially not changed. And again, if you just look at the loop, it's not moving. It's essentially stationary. Let's go in a little bit closer because I have a couple different views here, and we'll talk about where it's going next, but I think it's important to focus what's going on right now. Here's a real close-up view, and again, if you've been to Freeport in the Bahamas, you know this area quite well, right there. Oh, why is this thing not? There we go. Let me turn this on. Lost my cursor here. I don't know what's going on. Let me see if I can refresh this. Okay. Okay, apparently I can't draw on the screen, so I'm going to have to use my other telestrator. Let me grab my cursor here. Hopefully you guys will be able to see this. We'll grab this pointer. There we go. So there's the eye wall. Again, Freeport is right there. High Rock, Sweeting Key. And then this is where it made landfall yesterday. So you see the eye wall just wobbling. And again, when we look for movement, the wobbling is typical. You know, it's like a spoke. It's going to wobble a little bit because it's not perfectly round and hard. So it's going to wobble a little bit. But if you notice the movement, I'll put the cursor right there. It does not move. In fact, it looks virtually stationary. Yeah, that's not good, folks. That thing to be sitting right there for that period of time, certainly, oh, I froze. Let me refresh myself. Being frozen right there is not a good sign for it to be sitting over the same spot for hours and hours and hours and hours, just hammering those poor people. So let me give you the track. This is the 5 p.m. update. Remember, we will get a track update coming up at around 11 p.m. I get it a little bit earlier. Stationary winds 140 miles an hour. And remember, this is now 45 miles slower than yesterday at this time, but it's still 140 miles. It's just staggering to think about that. The track has not changed much in the last day and a half. This is about as consistent a track as I've seen in a while. If there was a lot of long-range worry about the track a couple days ago, that has gone away, at least in the short term. The problem is it's very close to eastern North Carolina, and my concern is, this area in the eastern part of the state, we've got this threat in the eastern part of the state that we're going to see, that we're going to see this potential, landfall somewhere in eastern North Carolina actually might end up being where we see landfall with this thing. So the potential landfall in the United States might actually end up being in eastern North Carolina and not in Florida at all, which would be crazy to think about. Just 5 or 6 days ago, we thought Florida and then maybe recurving up to the Carolinas, but the first hit might actually be in parts of North Carolina. Updated watches and warnings, these are important. Make sure you heed all local officials. If you're under an evacuation order, please leave. Hurricane warnings up for the Florida coast, and we've got now hurricane watches from Jacksonville basically all the way up to about Georgetown in South Carolina. You couple that with the fact that we've got storm surge warnings for the east coast of Florida, where we're expecting 3 to 6 feet and maybe 4 to 7 feet. South Carolina, we've got a storm surge watch, which is in effect currently, and that's because the water is going to be pushed north. Now, let's look at the radar. The radar can tell you a lot here because we can see where the center is or where it's not moving. The spiral bands are hitting the eastern side of Florida with gusts up to 40 miles per hour. The big question tonight is, where is this thing going? Why is it stalling? I've been inundated with questions about why it stalled, even though it was in the forecast since last Friday, believe it or not. It's basically because it is between a trough, which is going to come down here. It's not strong enough. The old ridge, which is out here in Weekend, it's actually pushing away, and a big ridge here in the western U.S. So currently, the storm is sitting in like no man's land. There are no steering currents, certainly in this area, because this is too far away, this is too far away in weak, and this is too far away. So what could happen? Well, the forecast is for this short wave, which is up in Canada, to dive down. It's a mini little dip that will enhance this dip in the jet stream and force it to the north towards the weakness. Storms don't like to go into high pressure. They can't. They're like mountains of air. So they go towards weaknesses. Weaknesses are low pressure. So it's going to want to be steered in this general direction eventually. It could also be steered if this high built down in this direction and kicked it up. People ask, why isn't it going to go due west? Well, this would have to be building this way, and this would have to be lifting out. And right now, that doesn't seem to be happening. So there's 3 things that are really keeping it from doing that. And for that reason, that's why you're seeing such high consistency in the model guidance. All the models essentially are unchanged here. I mean, from right there, I'm gonna pause it for a second. That is really tight clustering of the models. I mean, it's crazy to think how well put together those things are. That the fact that we have, basically so much consistency in the track right now in these areas along the coast. So there's very few or none that are on shore except for up here in eastern North Carolina, which is the area of greatest concern, I said, for landfall, because if I look at the tracks here, you can see there are a couple that make landfall in Carteret County in the Outer Banks. There's a couple inland, but these models have not been doing well. 90% of the guidance is just offshore where we have basically the forecast. So let's look at the forecast. Here's a look at the upper air pattern. I can show you those ridges and troughs that we just talked about. First things first, I'm going to play this and you'll see where our storm is going to try to go. We'll stop this right, let me play this, right about there. So what you see happening here is the ridge is out west. This ridge actually builds to the south a little bit and starts inducing a north wind. And then we've got this dip in the jet stream that's doing this. So everything in this graphic right here from a forecast standpoint, again, this is Wednesday by 4 p.m. shows an accelerating system to the north and west, because this is going to have to go this direction. These two areas are forced, so it can't go this way. It's being plowed into. It really can't go east. Because this is building here, it can't go west, so the really only natural progression is this direction. Now, because North Carolina sticks out, and I'm going to zoom in carefully, this is mainly just a byproduct of how the coast is shaped. The fact that the coast sticks out, this turn towards the northeast means it can clip the Outer Banks. There's three areas in the United States that get hit more often than any other location on the coast. It's Florida, the mouth of the Mississippi River, and the Outer Banks, because they stick out. They just get clipped by these systems. So that's why you're going to see that area get hit. Again, for the North Carolina coast and South Carolina coast, I know people in Florida, you're going to be in the high impact area as well. I just wanted to show this again because I think it's important to see the areas that will have the highest impact. Storm surge, by far our biggest concern. Medium, just inland because of wind and maybe some power outage and possibly some flooding, though I'll be honest, I don't think the flooding from the rain inland is going to be a big issue. I have extreme possibilities on the coast here. That's what the pink is. But that's where we could see winds over hurricane force, maybe 110, and storm surge. So this kind of gives you a rough idea on where I see everything going. So here's a look. This is a really cool graphic because it shows how big the wind field is. And you can see it clipping eastern part of Florida here. So if you look carefully, you can see it clipping the whole eastern part of the state there with tropical storm force winds. And because of that, that's why you see the hurricane warning. As we get up towards North Carolina, it becomes a little bit more a tropical storm and 60-mile-an-hour winds. I think the hurricane force winds stay offshore, except if this goes up into eastern North Carolina, then we'd have the potential there. And this kind of will reiterate that. I'm going to show this a little wide view here in a second. So that's the chances of tropical storm force winds, and then moving up here into the Carolinas. So I'm going to stop it there on Friday morning because it's moving away. But just to show you for the area around Charlotte, the chances of seeing tropical storm force winds are pretty small. And again, we're talking 39-mile-an-hour winds. The chances of seeing hurricane force winds, obviously highest down to Florida. But as you get up into North Carolina, that threat is a lot lower. I'm going to widen this out. I don't have the numbers down for Florida, but you get an idea. Right, the Cape, probably the best chance of seeing that happen. And rainfall, again, the rainfall is another thing to show you how much rain could we see along the path. Essentially along the coast, you could see anywhere from as little as 4 to as much as 10, and just offshore, 7 to 10. So the area of greatest concern for me actually is right in here, because this is where we have the biggest crossover of potential heavy rain, highest winds, and highest storm surge. So the three threats that we have from hurricanes all maximized here in eastern North Carolina from about Wilmington all the way to the central Outer Banks. And in particular, the Pamlico Sound, Carteret County, the Neuse River, the Tar River, and areas like New Bern, Greenville, Kinston, Morehead City, that whole area, which is the area of greatest concern right now. Here's a look. Let me see if I can get this to play. Just see how this unfolds here. Let me pause this real quick. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Sorry, I'm going to pause it here. So I'm focused on the Carolinas first, but let me back it out just to kind of show you the progression of this. So you can see it just offshore. And again, some of these rain bands could affect areas on the coast. And look at the time up at the top of the screen, 2 a.m. Wednesday. And then you'll see how this picks up some speed as it moves to the north. I'm going to stop it right there. Back it up just a hair. So by Wednesday, 5 p.m., this is where it gets really close to Charleston, Savannah, with some rain bands. And again, remember this whole time it's pushing water right at the coast. It is really turning this thing off to the northeast now at this time as that trough is digging down. But the problem is this is so close to the coast that you're getting, let me bring this back, you're getting water piling up against the coast. Remember, this whole time that the wind is rotating around and it is pushing water towards the coast. So even though the storm is moving this direction, the flow around it is forcing all of that water to go towards the coast. And that is what's going to cause the flooding that we're going to experience here in the North Carolina, South Carolina area. Thus, you have the storm surge watch up, and that will be expanded. There's no question. You'll see it expand. And then it moves up here. Let me play this, and you could see it moving off towards Wilmington. Again, this is Thursday at 4 p.m. So the worst weather in eastern North Carolina, it looks to be Thursday afternoon into Thursday night. And notice back towards Charlotte for all my viewers here, we've got a cold front coming down that'll interact with it a little bit, so there might be some rain and wind, but really overall, the impact's going to be pretty minimal here as it pushes off to the north and east. So again, the advisory, I wish I had more information to give you. The overall steering currents aren't changing. The storm itself, in fact, is not changing because it literally has not moved in about 12 hours. It's just been sitting in the same spot, and it is going to slowly weaken. I should have mentioned that too. As it moves north, a couple things that are going to happen. That same trough that I was showing you, and let me show you the water vapor loop because I think this shows it pretty well as well. You can kind of see that trough, which is up here. Let me erase that jet stream. That doesn't really help you. So there's a little dip in the jet stream up here that's going to come down and increase this. This southwesterly flow is actually wind shear as well. So as it gets north, it should weaken as it interacts with that southwest flow. And because it's stationary right now, just sitting there, there's actually upwelling going on, which is basically the water underneath this is being overturned. The cool water from the bottom is being lifted to the top, and the warm water is being mixed up. So the surface water is actually getting cooler over time. It's raining too. It's been cloudy. So that upwelling and cooling of the water actually robs some of the fuel from it. So it's been pretty impressive that it's been sitting there with such a distinct eye, but that's why you're seeing the pressure rise and the winds slowly go down until it starts moving. That upwelling is going to be an issue. As it moves north and weakens a little bit, the wind field will actually spread out. And just to show you what that wind field is right now, this is what the current wind field is as of this advisory. So let me pause this as it momentarily comes up. So this was the wind field as of 8 p.m., about 250 miles north-south and about 244 miles east to west. So the hurricane force winds only go out about 70 miles, and about 40 of that is on the right side or the east side, and 35 of that is on the west side. So that's kind of the magic number. You want to be more than, I would say, 50 miles from the center, and you won't get hurricane force winds, hopefully. You may get gusts, but not sustained. Any closer than that, then that's when you run into some big-time issues on the coast. So real quickly, let me look at the chat, see what kind of questions we have. I know a lot of folks want specifics about cities. I'm trying to be as rounded off as I can on this. I saw a lot of bad information today, unfortunately, being passed around about speed and direction and everything. I can tell you it's not a 0% chance that this could go west a little bit, but what I will tell you, and I like to be totally honest with people about uncertainty. Uncertainty is part of our craft as meteorologists. We kind of know that. When you look at the guidance like this, the fact that you've got three things that would deter it from going west significantly, like for instance, I have people inland areas going, oh my gosh, can it come west still? Well, in theory, it could come west a little bit. And by west, I mean hug the coast, make landfall in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, or North Carolina. It could get close to the coast. But for it to come way back here, that would have to shift hundreds of miles west. And there's really no reason to believe that's going to happen because what's happening right now is exactly as forecasted 2 days ago. It was supposed to stall in this exact location. So far, everything is lining up. So until something in the atmosphere, until we see something change or a real-time change, it's hard to argue against the forecast right now. In fact, I think it's been 6 consecutive cycles of the forecast showing almost identical track, give or take 5 to 20 miles, which is pretty amazing. So, no impacts in Charlotte region, high impacts on the coast Thursday, high winds along the coast. This is for North and South Carolina. High surge 4 to 7 feet and moving quickly by Friday morning. It's not going to stall over the Carolinas because it's getting picked up by that trough, so we shouldn't see as big an issue with this stalling that we see right now. So again, let me go through here real quickly. Any more storms brewing out there? Yeah, there's nothing brewing right now, but there's 4 areas we're keeping an eye on. I hate to tell you, but this is like a triage thing. None of those are an immediate threat to the United States. this is an immediate threat, so we're going to focus on this, and we can talk about those later. But we are in the height of hurricane season. Remember, September 10th is the peak day, actually, of hurricane season, so we're right there. So I would expect stuff to stay active out there. Any chance that Pamlico Sound pushes it east towards Hatteras? That whole area is going to be impacted. One of the things about eastern North Carolina that I will tell you is it almost doesn't matter if it shifts east or west. The impacts aren't going to change that dramatically. In fact, and let's go to the track real quickly because I think it's a good question. So if it makes this inland track, let's say, if it comes a little bit closer to coast and moves in here, the surge would be heavier down here and still bad surge here. If it hugs the coast, the surge is still bad here. If it goes here, here, or here, there's still storm surge here. There's very little that would stop surge here unless the storm did an immediate right turn now and never came north or east turn. So it seems very unlikely that we would escape the surge. What happens with every shift to the east for eastern North Carolina is it reduces the wind threat. It doesn't really reduce the surge threat, if that makes any sense to you. Hope that helps. And again, probably the most important graphic I didn't show you, and I think I showed this the other night, is which side of the storm matter? Well, one of the things to remember about storms is depending on what side of the storm you're on is really, really crucial to what kind of weather you get. So which quadrant of the storm is the worst? So if you take a hurricane, and we'll throw one up here, and you split it into 4 areas. If the storm is moving due north, the northeast quadrant is the worst part of the storm. You've got high winds and very, very maximum winds and also very maximum storm surge. If you go to the left front, storm surge could be high. This is why surge in the Carolinas will still be high even if the track shifts to the east, because you're still going to be in that front left storm surge area. The winds will be reduced there, but you'll still have storm surge. That's why people are evacuating the Carolina coast. Not because of the wind. You run from the water, you hide from the wind. That's what we always say. The front bottom right here is actually got very strong winds. So that's why anywhere on the east side, you don't want to be east of a hurricane. You could be hundreds of miles east of a hurricane or tropical system and have dangerous weather. West side can still be bad, but the farther away you get, the better it is. Still dangerous back here, but this is the weakest part of the storm. So if you're like 50, 60 miles away from the back, this is why Miami, by the way, and most of Miami is actually escaping any big weather with this, because this is the part of the storm. They're way out here in relation to where the storm is tracking. So that's why you're not seeing people on that southwest quadrant in any kind of hurricane warnings right now, or even hurricane watch. I know a lot of people in Miami were like, holy cow, look at that thing so close to us, because look where Miami is on this map. So again, I just showed you that graphic. The storm is going to eventually move this way. This is the worst part of the storm. This is the second worst. Big storm surge here, but less wind, and this is the weakest part where Miami is. So Miami's not seeing much of anything right now for that reason. So I hope that answers your question. Topsail Island, other barrier. Got questions about that. I will tell you, anybody on the North and South Carolina coast has got to be ready for significant storm surge. Anybody from Hatteras, really from, I would say, all the way up to the Virginia border down to here is going to have storm surge. There's just, there's just no way to get around. Let me erase that. I need this different cursor. I mean, I think everybody in here is going to have storm surge. It's hard to imagine there not being some kind of surge in those areas. And I had the surge graphic earlier, but I don't have it in this show. But the reason you're going to see so much surge is because of the track. Okay, so let me do a little demonstration here. So we've got the storm down here. The next 48 hours, it's going to be between Jacksonville and the Bahamas. And it's going to be between 130 to 120 mile per hour winds. Okay, that's sitting over water for 2 days with 100+ mile an hour winds. So what that is doing, that whole time, it is pushing water this direction. Okay, it's like a bulldozer in the atmosphere, but in this case, it's pushing water at the surface towards the coast. So let's say the storm decides to do something weird that we haven't seen, and it veers off in this direction. Well, the problem is it's had 4 days of pushing that water north. That water's coming north regardless. If you're in the pool or the tub or anything and you take your hand and push it and then stop it, your arm stops, the water does not. It keeps going forward, okay? It can propagate. Waves and surge can propagate long distances. So don't be shocked if the storm veers further offshore and the surge doesn't go down at all, because there's really, the way this is tracking and how strong it is, the surge is going to be there, I think, regardless. That's why in North Carolina, South Carolina, people get caught up in where the track is. The center's going. It doesn't matter in this case. It's already going to be moving water north, and once that water gets built up, the only thing that saves the big storm surge on the coast is if this thing decides right now to do one of these or do one of these. If it's coming north for 2 days and then turns right here, there's still going to be storm surge heading here. The other thing is, look at the shape of the coast. The southeast coast, of the United States is like a giant funnel here. If you look at it, this area is just a giant funnel. I keep grabbing the wrong tool here. Let me take this arrowhead off. This is like a giant funnel. So water gets pushed in here, and it all wants to pile up on this coast. There's nowhere for it to go. It's not like a flat coast where it can get deflected. It just builds up here. If you've lived in the southeast in the last week or so, the king tides have been crazy. King tides are really bad right now, and then you throw in a storm, causes all kinds of issues. So I don't want to ramble too much on, but that's the update for tonight. I'll be on tonight at 11. If you're not in our viewing area, you can watch us on the app or on our website, wcnc.com. I will be doing these every night at 11 or at 8 p.m. Eastern time, or roughly. And every morning I will be doing a vlog. Like if you follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or on YouTube, you know that I do a vlog every morning discussing the latest. I will be doing that throughout the duration of the storm, likely up into this weekend. So good night, everybody. I'll see you tonight at 11. Again, I will post these updates on my page as well, so stay tuned. And make sure you go to my page. Don't wait for these to show up in your news feed, because the news feed is just a mess. Stuff's out of date, out of line. So it changes all the time. So make sure you go to my page or push notifications on from my page to get the latest. Thanks, everybody.